From LinkedIn News, I'm Leah Smart, host of Everyday Better, an award-winning podcast dedicated to personal development. Join me every week for captivating stories and research to find more fulfillment in your work and personal life. Listen to Everyday Better on the LinkedIn Podcast Network, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Did you know that small and medium businesses make up 98% of the global economy, but most B2B marketers still treat them as a one-size-fits-all? LinkedIn's Meet the SMB report reveals why that's a missed opportunity and how you can reach these fast-moving decision makers effectively. Learn more at linkedin.com/meet-the-SMB.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to another exciting episode of Negotiate Anything. Thanks for joining us today. With over 10 million downloads and listeners from more than 180 different countries, it's dedicated listeners just like you who have made Negotiate Anything the #1 negotiation podcast in the world. I'm your host, Kwame Christian. I'm a business lawyer, mediator, author, and the proud CEO of the American Negotiation Institute. Now, before we get into today's insightful conversation, I have a golden opportunity for those of you who recognize the power of negotiation in your professional lives. Have you ever found yourself wishing that you could navigate those high-stakes conversations with more confidence? Or perhaps you're looking to empower your team with the art of persuasion and conflict resolution. At the American Negotiation Institute, we've crafted specialized keynotes and workshops tailored for those very needs. We've transformed the negotiation skills of professionals worldwide, and we're eager to do the same for you. We believe the best things in life are on the other side of difficult conversations, and our goal is to help you improve your lives and the lives of those around you, one difficult conversation at a time. Don't let another challenging conversation leave you second-guessing. Click the link in the description to discover how we can help you find confidence in conflict, negotiate better deals, and have stronger relationships. Because in the world of business, every conversation counts. And now, without further ado, let's jump into the interview. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kwame, wonderful. So good to be here. So I feel like it's kind of like talk radio, right? Where people always call in and, hey, Kwame, long-time listener, first-time caller, first time being on the pod. So very excited.
Yeah, dude, this is great. And I've been waiting for this for a long time. So how about you get started by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Likewise, yeah. So let's see. As far as what I'm up to, man, wearing a lot of hats, doing a lot of different things these days, but that's what keeps life interesting, right? So I guess if you pull up the resume, my day job is being an associate general counsel at Huron Consulting. So I'm working in the investment banking practice group. So I get to, again, wear multiple hats, a little bit of an attorney, a little bit of a banker, and, able to kind of put both those, disciplines to good use. Then in my free time, I'm also president of Ohio State's New York City Alumni Club, which is that's kind of my moonlighting gig, so to speak. So I know we wanted to talk a little bit about that at some point during our chat today, and, the impact that volunteerism has on making us better negotiators. So I think that's another, point that's really important to me.
I love this. And listeners, you can tell clearly with Ryan's background why he is here, because he is an exceptional negotiator and has a lot of great legal and business experience. But we need to go back. We need to go back to the origins of Ryan when it comes to you as a negotiator. Tell me your origin story.
Kwame, your and my origin story is very comparable there. That both, we can tell for anyone watching us today on the video feed. I've got my scarlet and gray jacket on here. Kwame has a nice gray jacket with the red pocket square. We're both Buckeyes. OH, my friend.
IO.
There you go. So, and double Buckeyes, actually, I should add, that both did our undergrad and law school at Ohio State. So, the roots run deep there. But, right, so Kwame and I got started, finding negotiation in essentially the same way that for me, at Moritz, during your 2 and 3L year, that you have the opportunity to participate in the negotiation competition that the school hosts. So I was not taking the negotiation course, hadn't really, even come across my radar or something that I was thinking of. And one of my good friends who was taking the course said, oh, hey, they forced us to do the competition. I need a partner. You want to do this with me? Yeah, sure. Why not? So I jumped in. We started competing, and inexplicably to this day, I still do not know how, but somehow managed to back our way into winning the competition. So we got very fortunate. The gentleman who the competition is named after, Jim Lawrence, one of the final round judges, became a very close friend and mentor. before. I know, Kwame, you've co-taught a course with Jim as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this
So
is great. And we had the opportunity to moot, right? Go
that's
back and
right.
forth
That's where
too,
you
right?
and I. That's where you and I first met, because I believe you were, I think, 2 years ahead of me in terms of graduating. So we didn't really have much overlap in law school. But by the time that I was starting out with the negotiation competition, you were already out and practicing, and came back and were very kind to donate your time. So again, right back there, that volunteerism point to come back and help us out. So yeah, gosh, we're going on close to a decade at this point, which is both impressive and also sort of hard to imagine.
Yeah. Terrifying is the word, Ryan. Terrifying.
I was trying to massage it a little there, but
It happens quickly. And listeners, to talk about the kind of full circle moment here, because we both were taught by Jim Lawrence at OSU how to negotiate, and he served as a mentor for both of us. And then I met Ryan by coming back and helping out with the negotiation team, and Ryan and his teammate were incredible. So I was like, the future at Ohio State is bright. We're in good hands. I like that. And now next year, we're going to be co-teaching the same negotiation course at the law school. It's wild. So it's cool to see just the connection.
yes, indeed. That's the beauty of that Ohio State network, and just maintaining relationships, finding good people. And when you do find those good people, man, you just grab on and see what the future holds there. So no, Jim's wonderful as well. I've had a lot of fun too the last few years going back and helping him judge the final round. And Kwame, when you talk about the future being bright, again, very kind of you to say there about CJ and I. But my gosh, I go back and watch the students do this now, and it is just so impressive. It seems like every year it gets better and better.
I love it. Yeah, I agree. So now let's get to the episode, because listeners, I talk to Ryan all the time, and he has a lot to offer us when it comes to these negotiation skills and practical negotiation skills. And in our preparation, or when we were talking through this, I was really excited to see that one of the first things that you wanted to talk about was the case for humility in difficult conversations. So let's go ahead and start there.
Absolutely. So, I think that, so many times as we think about negotiation, you can, pick, you can make a list of the top 10, the top 25, attributes that are, good for a negotiator. But in my experience, the one that I just keep coming back to, and that, time and time again has served me well, is, this idea of humility in terms of being a negotiator. So, I think so many times, especially as attorneys, and, I mentioned earlier, I work in investment banking. So, if any of you are out there watching, Billions or Suits or Succession, that humility can sometimes be in short supply in this industry. That there is a lot of ego, rampant. There's a lot of good people, but there's always a little inherent element of ego there as well. I think part of that, though, stems from this idea that you have a lot of type A personalities and problem solvers. And so I look at it as well, I'll go back, my mother still loves to tell this story, almost 40 years later. But when I was a little kid, that if someone asked me a question that I didn't know, my default response would be pause, and then, well, you say it, then I'll say it. That I never wanted to admit that I didn't know something. I never wanted to seem like I didn't have all the answers. And I think as I've gotten older, that trait has dropped away. Hopefully, I've realized that there's actually value in not always having the answers or going into a negotiation. There's value in researching and being prepared. But when it comes to walking in, if you go in and say, well, I've spent 50 hours researching this, and here are my suggestions, and here are my recommendations, here's exactly what I think we should do, you're not taking time to ask questions to the other side. You're not taking time to gather facts. You're not taking time to learn what their concerns are, what suggestions they might have. If you just always barrel in with the with all the answers, I think that's not an effective tactic in most negotiations. So and I kind of come back to this point on ego as well. And so one of my absolute favorite quotes that Kwame and I have talked about this before, it's from an old, long dead German philosopher, author, poet, amateur scientist. He was basically Ben Franklin of Germany in many ways, that, a true Renaissance man. His name's Wolfgang Johann von Goethe. And so actually, if von Goethe sounds familiar as well, that, the German cultural institutes around the world are named after Goethe. So that's where he pops up as well. So what Goethe said that I really like is this idea that misunderstanding and lethargy are perhaps the cause of more complications in the affairs of the world than deceit or malice. At any rate, the latter two are certainly more rare. And so, taking a second to unpack that, you stop and think, what's he really getting at here? And it's this idea that, yeah, there are people out there who, are going to try and take advantage of a situation or, where we're at. But for the most part, the things that happen to us they're not personal. No one, but it's less rare, or it's less frequent that someone comes in and wants to take advantage. The better course there is to think, hey, this is nothing personal. maybe their kid kept them up last night because they were sick. Maybe their boss has unreasonable expectations on them. That when we encounter some of the resistance there, I think it's better to say, this isn't about me, which is, again, setting aside ego, and this is about some challenge that they're facing. And so when we do that, I think it really makes a difference. It also goes back to this idea, too, that we live in such a polarized culture where, it's always this idea of, us versus them, and that everyone's, out to get you. And it's just not the case. I've found that, time and time again throughout my work that, when you give people the benefit of the doubt, it's really good. And actually, Kwame, this reminds me, calling back to another episode that you did recently. One of my absolute favorites was when you had Melissa Fortunato on from the FBI. So I was thinking about Melissa talking about, giving the benefit of the doubt in cases where she had, she was engaged in a hostage negotiation, that she was there with the FBI, that, the SWAT team was, standing beside her door, that typically when Melissa shows up on your door, she's not there to have, tea and biscuits, that something has gone considerably wrong at this juncture. So if Melissa is able to give people on the FBI's radar the benefit of the doubt, and to treat them humanely, and to realize that, this isn't about Melissa or Melissa's ego or the ego of the FBI, that, if she can do that, why can't we all do that, right?
Absolutely. This is such a good breakdown. First of all, Melissa's episode was awesome. If you haven't listened to that, check that one out. And when you have folks from the FBI on, you can't top their stories. Their stories, right?
That wedding story, yeah, Kwame. I already know that there's nothing you and I are going to discuss today that's cooler than that. But yeah, tip of the cap to Melissa for that one.
For sure. Hello, my friends. Before we get back to today's episode, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever wondered how to elevate your team's negotiation game and how you can help the folks on your team have better, difficult conversations? At the American Negotiation Institute, we offer transformative keynotes and workshops tailored to empower professionals with top-tier negotiation and conflict resolution skills. Whether it's a keynote for your next event or hands-on training for your team, we've got you covered. Don't just negotiate. Master the art with the American Negotiation Institute. Click the link in the description to find out more. Elevate, negotiate, and succeed.
Small and medium businesses don't have time to waste, and neither do marketers trying to reach them. On LinkedIn, more SMB decision makers are actively looking for new solutions to help them grow, whether it's software or financial services. Our Meet the SMB report breaks down how these businesses buy and what really influences their choices. Learn more at linkedin.com/meet-the-SMB. That's linkedin.com/meet-the-SMB.
I love this approach to humility too, because I think a lot of times when we think about the word humility, it's one of those terms that's used so frequently that it has lost meaning, especially when it comes to the specific circumstances that we find ourselves in, which when it comes to this podcast, we're talking about difficult conversations. And you're right. I think this is giving us a really interesting opportunity to analyze some of the most consequential conversations that are happening on this planet in different ways, because we gave the example of Melissa being very humble and giving the benefit of the doubt. Let's talk about you. You are in New York City, like the financial capital of the world, as a associate general counsel at an investment bank, right? So this is significant. You're doing really high level transactions. And yes, I love Billions. I'm obsessed with that show and shows like it. And there is not much humility. And I think it's really so empowering and encouraging to see that you have established yourself in this really high-paced, sometimes aggressive type of work environment, and still you're able to comport yourself with humility, and you see that as a strategic asset. And so I want to go deeper into how you're able to still carry this virtue of humility while at the same time standing your ground and not getting steamrolled by somebody who might be very aggressive and or egotistical.
Such a good question, such a good setup there. So the one that I think back to a lot was actually a transaction that occurred at my prior firm. So it was really fun. We were doing a lot of emerging markets work, and it was a sell side opportunity that we were working down Peru. And so this company, they'd been family owned for multiple generations. They were at a point where the children come to the States, weren't going to be around to operate the business, and so they were looking for their exit strategy. They were looking to sell and get out, but they were also, this company was just ingrained at the center of this community. They did not want to sell to anyone. They didn't want to necessarily take the highest value payday that they could. Their concerns were, walking through, they were concerned. They were very focused on environmental sustainability. They were very focused on protecting their workers. They were very focused on the legacy of the family and the company and how they fit into the community. And so in that case, with a sell side transaction, you're going to have multiple companies come in and bid. And we had one that they offered a slightly higher dollar value, but they weren't receptive. They weren't listening to these concerns. And we had another partner, the price was a little bit lower for the transaction, but they were much more receptive. They asked questions. They just seemed like they were going to be a better partner for this company. And so ultimately, that's the one that ended up winning out. And so I think that shows that, again, this idea that it's listening. It's having good listening skills. It's being able to interest spot and pick up on the cues that you're getting there. And so that's one that always pops out in my mind.
I love that, because this is, again, we're not selling these businesses for pennies. We're talking about millions of dollars in finance that's going back and forth, right? It's substantial amounts of money. But we're seeing here that sometimes the person might have values that are greater than the bottom line. And this is a great example. But you won't know that unless you actually take the time to listen and not just hear, but listen, because we might biologically go through the process of the vibrations from the air going through and hitting our tympanic membrane. We heard it, but did we actually listen and process and empathize in a meaningful way? Because then that shows respect to the other side. It shows humility, because it shows that you're not jumping to inappropriate conclusions or assumptions. And then it also gives you an opportunity to make appropriate adjustments in order to get the deal done. And we're seeing that the other side, we don't know their circumstances, but hypothetically, let's say they could have made some adjustments, but they chose not to simply because they were not listening to what the other side was saying. So that's a really great example of how truly listening, empathizing, and being curious, and not just leading with what you want or what you believe or how you see things, can provide you with opportunities to create really unique deals.
Correct, Kwame. I love the term you use there as well. Just the other words, I think it goes kind of hand in hand. It was empathy, that when we start to talk about letting go of your ego as a negotiator, not making everything about you, and asking questions, focusing on the other side, listening versus simply hearing. And at that point, I think that it makes it so much easier to empathize. And one thing that I found that's been super helpful in my career as well is just having an interdisciplinary background. So for me, my undergrad was finance, international business, and political science. I spent some time running around DC doing policy and lobbying work. Went over to Scotland to pick up my master's in Edinburgh. I did environmental science and sustainability, and then came back and went to law school. And so all these different areas that I've worked in over the years, and with each one, and then my first job out, I was working in a firm that does emerging markets. Now I'm doing healthcare. So it's kind of all these different avenues that, it's that old saying about, just enough to be dangerous about a subject that, but the thing is, and it comes back to humility, so for me, a lot of times I'll be in a meeting room with someone and I know enough to be conversant. I know enough that I can talk and kind of build a rapport. That I like to read, study, know a lot about, know a little bit about a lot of different things. And I think that goes back to the idea too of building rapport with people. When they see, oh, we have this commonality, we can talk about this or that. So actually, Kwame, it was funny when I was interviewing for my prior firm. I ended up with one of the partners with probably a 30-minute interview. I think we spoke for maybe 5 minutes about my, technicals, qualifications, whatever, 25 minutes about rugby, because he found out I was over in Scotland and was a big rugby fan. He's a big rugby guy, played, here in New Jersey for a number of years. And yeah, it's just when you find those commonality points that you can, really jump in with someone, I think that makes a big difference. And so I kind of look at, someone like Van Gogh as well that we talked about earlier. So actually, it's really funny with him. He actually studied to be an attorney, did it for a couple months, realized, yeah, maybe this isn't my thing, and then went on to become one of the greatest authors in the German language ever. So you kind of find that we're looking at someone like Melissa, has a psychology background, works for the FBI, and there's just all these instances where having an interdisciplinary background I think is so incredibly useful, because it allows you to be conversant, to connect with people, but then also having the humility to say, there's a lot of times where I'll be chatting with someone, they're a subject matter expert, and I'll say, this is super interesting. I love what you're saying. I think I understand it, but, could you fill me in a little bit more? I think this is the point that I might be missing. Can you just kind of walk me through? I'd love to hear more about that. And, when you show interest, it makes, the conversation go that much better. So it's funny. One of my other mentors, the guy's brilliant. He's Ivy League educated attorney, super, super smart. He always will say to people, well, I'm just a simple country lawyer. So if you could, slow it down a little for me or something. I've adopted that every now and then. I kind of like that as well, that this guy has credentials, his resume could be a mile long, and it's just that humility that makes such a difference.
Yeah, it's great. And the thing is, when you're approaching it in this way, you're doing it in a way that does not take away from your credibility. It's just acknowledging the fact that although I have value, that value does not include knowing everything, right? It's really endearing. And it also gives the other side the license to do the same. They feel a little bit safer admitting when they might not know things. And the thing is, when sometimes you know a little bit about a lot of things, and it helps you to recognize just enough to the point where you know where you need to stop and ask another question, or it helps you to know what types of questions to ask. I might not know as much as this particular person on this particular narrow topic, but I know enough about it to hold a conversation competently. And I think this really goes down to one of the skills that I've seen so many negotiators have, which is fluidity. And I'm thinking about this in terms of not just intelligence in general, but cultural intelligence in particular, because we can think about the different things that you've learned. You said political science, finance, and then also environmental science, sustainability, and now law, right? This gives you a lot of credibility to navigate conversations on those topics adeptly, right? And so I think for us as people who are professionals, leaders, and negotiators, it's really important for us to have deep knowledge in the subject matter that we're focused on. So you have deep knowledge in law, investment banking, M&A, and those type of things. Inescapable reality that you have to have deep knowledge on that. And then you blend that with the knowledge you have on other topics. It just makes you so much more versatile when it comes to these conversations, because not only can you handle yourself in those conversations, but also, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, sometimes a way of thinking or a way of solving problems from a different modality or area of thought leadership can inform a creative solution in another area too.
I love that. As you were talking, and that was already sort of where my brain was drifting. You and I tend to find ourselves on the same wavelength there pretty frequently. So yeah, I agree. It's again, Kwame, going back to the class we're going to teach at Moritz next year. So excited for it because we're blending. We're going to have the law students, of course, but we're also bringing in students from the business school. And so I think that's spot on, is when you exist in a bubble, when you're, if you work in a law firm and are only around other attorneys, or you work in a bank and are only around other bankers. For me, at my last firm, I was the only attorney. And so I was really sitting there alongside all the bankers. I was approaching, I learned how to think more like a banker while still retaining my lawyer background. And so, yeah, the conversations were fantastic. We would both approach problems from a very different, strategy. That there were times where, we'd get into a dispute and someone would say, well, our contract's critical. Why don't we just sue them? Okay, we could do that, but you want to wait? You want to go to Brazil, navigate the Brazilian court system, pay who knows how much to litigate this, get paid in 5 years, or will we pick up the phone, talk to them? What if we try and sort through this? What if we set up a payment plan? What if we, there are any number of instances there where, but again, maybe I'm too much of a negotiator at times, or, take a little bit of a soft hand approach. And so, yeah, I think that when you can blend approaches, but yeah, also just being able to, for me, think about the way that they're approaching as well. Because I have the finance background also. So I think that's helpful when you're, able to view things and think about and kind of reason your way through problems in a different framework.
I love it. This is great, man. And I want to wrap up with the volunteer aspect, because when we chatted about this was really, really fascinating. And I think a lot of people could take a lot of wisdom from this. So you're saying that volunteer work can help you to become a better negotiator. Tell us about that.
10,000% agree with that statement. So, and here's why. So for the last 5 or so years, I've had the immense privilege of serving as the president of Ohio State's New York City Alumni Club. And so, you hear alumni clubs, and I think a lot of times we think, oh, for Ohio State, you're going to go watch the football game, you're going to have a happy hour, or, whatever. You're not doing too much in the way of, meaningful, impactful programming. But, certainly not the case. We have a scholarship endowment fund. We have tons of volunteer opportunities that we engage in, and also professional development, which brings me me very nicely to my next point. So just a few months ago, we had the fantastic privilege of bringing Kwame in to lead a negotiation skills workshop for our alumni in the area. And so the way that this came together, Kwame, we were kind of joking about this before we started recording. So we had to get creative to do this, because think about this. When you're leading a volunteer organization, you don't have an abundance of resources. It's not like leading a Fortune 100 company where I could say, hey, Kwame, would you come in and do this workshop if I gave you $50,000? And you say, okay, well, how about this? Let's make it $100,000, fly in on the private jet. I'll put you up at the Plaza Hotel. I'll get you some courtside tickets to the US Open for Sunday. How's that sound? Again, I know Kwame's a big tennis guy, so there, me and an interest. And I think I can make the trip for that. So anyone can do that, man, right? I mean, it's not hard when you have basically infinite resources to throw at the wall and come up with something. But in this instance, I kind of I thought, man, I'd love to get Kwame out here. It'd be so fun to do an event with him. And so we started this conversation. This event happened in May of this year. We started the conversation back in November. I chatted with Steph. We were talking about, well, hey, is Kwame planning to be in the city for any other events? Could we maybe make it where we can kind of dovetail and get, he's there for a Tuesday. We'll do our event on Wednesday or something. So we finally found out. It's actually really funny. We you were in town for one of your friends' weddings, and you were incredibly gracious and offered to stick around one more night and come in and meet with us on Monday morning. And again, back to this idea of, again, we're not a company. We don't have our own office space. We don't have anything that to rent office space even for a couple hours in New York. Come on, it's impossible. So on a budget, it's impossible. But I had a good relationship with another alum here in the city that again, it's post-pandemic, so everyone's still a little bit semi-remote there. Oh yeah, I'd love to do that for you. Yeah, just let me know whenever you guys want to come in. We'll open up the conference room. Kwame, we were up on like the 30th floor looking out over Central Park. It was incredible. Such a cool space. And again, that's just something where we had to get creative. We had to pivot a little bit there. Actually, I don't want to embarrass you with this, Kwame, but this is one of my favorite stories too. I think you know exactly where I'm going with this. It goes right back to humility and rolling with the punches, being flexible. So Kwame had been at his friend's wedding over the weekend. You were, I think, a groomsman or best man, but yeah, you were there in your tux, your rental shoes and stuff. You got there on Monday morning and said, man, my feet are killing me, but I want to make a good first impression. I'm going to come in my dress shoes and I'm going to flip over to the Nikes here, after I walk in. I remember laughing about then, but again, it just kind of goes to show the type of guy you are there. That the appearance matters, but you don't take yourself so seriously that you're like, I'm among friends. I can pop on the Air Jordans here.
I appreciate that, man. No, this is great, and I love this perspective because you worked that deal. I will tell you, my team is very protective. You made that happen, and it's a great example because, again, it's kind of like that old saying, necessity is the mother of invention. If you have infinite resources, cool, we'll just negotiate against ourselves because it doesn't matter and it's not personally my money. But when you are leading a volunteer organization, you have to be creative because you don't have the resources. And so we have to recognize that in these situations, there is still some kind of transactional element to it, even if no money per se is being traded back and forth. So you were able to find a way to lower the barrier of entry to make it super easy for me. And it was beneficial for me because I'm starting to recreate some more relationships in New York. And now I'm going to be back for another training, so it's a win-win. But again, if you don't have the need to be creative, then you won't be creative. And I think especially for folks who just in general, but people who are developing in their career, getting these opportunities to be a volunteer, but a leader is incredibly valuable because you're going to not only create great connections, but also sharpen your skills in ways that you might not have the opportunity to within your organization.
Totally. And that's the thing too. When you do get into some of those, Fortune 500 CEO type roles, if you've come up doing this, you know the value of a dollar. You know how to be creative, how to conserve resources, and not just throw money at the wall to see what sticks. So I think it's very good on that basis as well. And the other thing that I just flat enjoy about is you're able to find things that you're passionate about and through that network effect, amplify them. So, I'll give, I know you usually give all your guests at the end the opportunity to kind of promote what they're up to, what they're doing, give a little plug. So the one that I'll throw out there, and this goes for Ohio State alumni, golf fans, football fans, anyone under the sun, we are hosting a golf outing, golf and racket sports. So tennis, pickleball, padel, all that. I know the tennis is interesting to Kwame there on September 14th out on Long Island at the Seawain Club. And the biggest announcement or the biggest hook to all of this is we are so fortunate. We're going to be joined by Coach Jim Trussell and his wife Ellen. We have a few former players from back in the early 2000s, early 20-teens there as well that are flying into to join us. We have senior members from the university's leadership team coming in. And again, these are all relationships relationships that we've built up over, the last few years to make something like this happen. We're working towards a goal of raising $100,000 for our scholarship endowment by the end of 2024. So this goes a long way towards that, to basically bring people in. And guys, you're again, Kwame, this kind of comes back to the idea for the silent auction stuff. We have 4 floor seats for the Knicks that we were able to source through different relationships. We have a foursome at Muirfield. We're giving away. We're auctioning all of this. But that's again, it comes back to, we can't go on and pay for this. We're not running a corporate golf outing. So we've had to get really creative with the way that we bring everything together, bring folks to the table. And so that's something that I'm just super, super proud of. We've got another great alum who's really been helpful with that. His name's Greg Waldman. So I always like to give a shout out to my friends that are helping me on this. So yeah, and again, I'd met Greg a handful of times at events, but Greg was the one with the relationship with Coach. Greg has really picked up the ball and run with it. So many of these other relationships, and so through volunteerism, you meet really cool people. You share the same interest, and just it's that multiplier effect where you can't do it yourself. So it's been a lot of fun. So anyone out there, Buckeye Nation, football, golf, tennis, whatever, if you have an interest in any of them, Kwame's got my LinkedIn. He'll shoot it to you. Find me on there. We'll get you out here to see Win Club on September 14th.
I love this, Ryan. I will put links to all of that in the description to make it really easy for everybody. Ryan, this was a masterclass, my friend. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Can't wait to come back sometime. So Kwame, what we should do when we do the course next year? Let's get the students on. Let's make this a Well, we got ideas brewing, my friend. You and I are always bouncing off each other.
I like that. Oh, that's cool. Okay, cool, man. Yeah, we'll make that happen. You see the gears turning already? This is great.
That's why I love working with you. You have a wonderful rest of the day, my friend. Take care.
You too. Congratulations, you've just joined an elite club. By listening to a full episode, you're now officially on the Negotiate Anything team. So welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast because that allows them to automatically get the latest episodes of the show. The best things in life lie on the other side of difficult conversations. Keep learning, keep practicing, and keep getting better. Your relationships will improve, your career will soar, and you'll have the confidence you need to get the most out of these crucial conversations. Again, thank you for joining the team. We're excited to have you, and I will see you in the next episode. I'll catch you later.